Okay, guys. So today we will talk about chapter 12. It's about intrusion data analysis. We have three main agenda items. We'll start with the evaluating alerts. We'll discuss how we can perform analysis to alerts. Why do we need analysis? Why do we need to analyzing the alerts and stuff like that. Then we will be talking about working with data, like how we can reduce the data, because whenever you are dealing with the security data, you might be getting data from different sources. So we need to see how we can reduce the data, and data archiving techniques, like for how long we need to retain the data, when we need to expire the data and stuff like that. And last is the digital forensics. I believe most of you guys are already familiar with forensic techniques and all that stuff, but I'll just walk through with the basic definition of forensics, the process of digital forensics, and how we can retain the data, in fact, how we can actually preserve the originality of the data, the evidence, in fact. So let's start with the first agenda item, evaluating alerts. The most important thing in security monitoring is called security onion. Security onion is basically, it's kind of a suite of software. It's basically a software suite of open source software suite, which has plenty of network security monitoring tool. So security onion is basically, it's the open source suite of network security monitoring tools, which usually run on Ubuntu, Linux distribution. It's fully compatible with Red Hat Linux and other. Most of the components of or most of the software of Security Onion are open source, not owned by a single company, but some of the components of Security Onion are owned by Cisco and River Bend Technologies. So these two companies, they actually own some of the components, but again, whatever they actually own, they made it open source. So you can download, you can actually modify and customize those stuff as well. So Security Onion, as I mentioned earlier, as I mentioned here, it's kind of an open source suite of the software, having plenty of other software. Mainly, if you see the architecture of Security Onion, it has detection tools, it has some analysis tool, and different type of data analysis as well that you can in fact perform on the collected data. In order to detect intrusion, in order to, you can say, in order to generate alerts, there are mainly five tools. The first tool is CapMe. Second tool is the SNORT. And again, all these tools are open source. You can individually install these tools as well. CapMe, Snort, Bro. There's another tool called OSSec. And the fifth one is called Suricata. All these tools are the alert generation. They can generate alerts. They can also they can also detect the, you can say, the intrusions as well. For analysis, one of the most widely used tool is called Sguil. Most of the security operations centers, they actually use Sguil, and probably if you step into security industry, probably you will be working on Sguil. Sguil, then we have ELSA, Enterprise. It's called Enterprise Log Search and Archive. We'll talk about it. And the third one is Wireshark, which is basically a packet capturing tool, but it's a full packet capturing, so you can perform analysis and some other critical stuff on the packet as well. Data can be of many types. It could be PCAP file, it could be session file, syslog data, and stuff like that. We'll talk about all of them in detail. So let's discuss all of them, like how detection tool works, what exactly these tools do in fact, how we perform analysis and all that stuff. Let's discuss one by one. So for detection tools, the first tool is CapMe. CapMe is basically, it doesn't generate alerts. Mainly what it does, it actually provides an interface to visualize layer 4 session. Layer 4 is basically a transport layer where we can see the TCP IP packets in detail, like we can see the headers, we can see their like segmentation and all that stuff. So with the CapMe, it provides visualization. The security analyst, they can actually they can easily read out the entire session of the session 4, layer 4 in fact. Then we have SNORT. I think we already talked about SNORT a lot. SNORT is basically an intrusion detection host intrusion detection system, and as well as we can also use SNORT for network intrusion detection as well. So SNORT is basically it uses rules and signatures to generate alerts. So you can define certain rules, like for example, if anything, like if you detect any packet like that, then generate alert and all that. Bro is basically very similar to SNORT, but it mainly uses policies, and those policies are based on scripts. So you need to write a script, like a PowerShell script. So they use policies which are based on script to decide what to log and when to generate alert. Then we have another tool for alert generation. It is called OSSEC. OSSEC is basically it's basically a host intrusion detection system. And what exactly it does? OSSEC is basically you can say it actively monitors host system operations. Host system, again, it could be a client system, it could be an individual computer as well. And what kind of operations they actively monitor? They can monitor the logs, it can monitor file integrity and rootkits. And again, based on all this stuff, it can generate alert. Suricata is basically a multi-threading based alert generation system, which forwards the packets to multi-core processors. So for example, if you have multiple cryptographic processor, by using that tool, it actually distribute the packets among all those cores. So these are basically the detection tools. CapMe, as you can see down here, it's not basically alert generation, just a visualization tool for layer 4 visualization. In fact, SNORT, it's alert generation, Bro alert generation, OSSEC, and Suricata. These 4 are basically alert generation tools. Now let's talk about the analysis, like what Sguil does, or what ELSA does, what's basically the Wireshark. So let's talk about the first one, Sguil. So Sguil is basically, it provides an interface. Let's say this is, you can have a main interface. This is, let's say, Sguil. Sguil is basically getting alerts, getting data from all over. Like they are getting data from Bro, SNORT, and some other tools as well. So what it does, it actually gets the data, organize the data in a timestamp. So what exactly Sguil does? Sguil actually, it provides an interface, or you can say console for investigating for investigating alerts coming from multiple sources, including all those bro, OSSEC, and etc. etc. It organizes the alerts in a queue by time-stamping them. Time-stamping means, for example, let's say if this packet comes first, of course, automatically it will be assigned a time. So Sguil usually use a algorithm like first in, first out. Okay, so whatever comes first, it will be processed first. Then we have ELSA, which stands for enterprise log search and archive. So this particular tool is, you can say, a centralized log database. ELSA is basically a centralized log database, like all the tools which generate logs, like for example, intrusion, host intrusion detection system, network intrusion detection system, firewalls, and for example, syslog servers. All these particular tools, they maintain a log. After making a log, they actually update or they actually forward the log to ELSA. So ELSA is basically a common platform from where security analysts, like being a security analyst, you don't have to pull the log from all these separate servers. You have to actually go to ELSA, because all these tools are configured with ELSA. Whenever they capture something, make a log, they forward it to ELSA. So ELSA, it's basically centralized log database, in simple word if you want to define it, because these tools are configured to forward the log to ELSA. Wireshark, I believe we already talked about Wireshark a lot. It's like a full packet capturing tool. So it is also a part of the onion ring. Next is the need for the evaluating alerts. Now, question is, why do we need to evaluate alerts? One thing which is very worth it to note, all these alerts, they commonly have 5 things. Like the 5 things which are common in alert is basically source IP address, SRCIP. It is called source IP address. Source IP, like source IP who has created or because of which the event occurred. Then source port number, like from which port of the source the event came from. Then the destination IP address, destination IP address, then the destination port address, and the 5th one is the IP packet, the IP protocol, like which particular protocol has been exploited or had been used for that event. So the next thing was basically need for evaluation of alert. Why do we need to evaluate the alerts? First of all, as I believe everybody is well familiar, the most important thing is, like, it is extremely difficult to avoid security attacks. Nobody can claim that we have a system which can avoid all security attacks. So why we need to do that? Number one, we are doing this because I mean, main idea is just to protect our system from unauthorized people, unauthorized traffic. The first important point that you need to remember is over detection, the alert, or you can say intrusion detection rules should be overly protective, overly conservative. So rules should be overly conservative. There should be no way to avoid or bypass the rules. Number two, like for example, alert is generated. We got an alert. So we need to actually classify whether incident happened or not, whether it's this happened or not. So we need to actually verify. For example, we got an alert and actual event didn't even occur. So we need to actually see whether, I mean, we got an alert. So we need to see that whether exploit occurred or not. So this is very important. We need to find it out. Number three, for example, if you are a tier 1 cybersecurity guy, so probably you will be working on SQL that I mentioned earlier, and we do all these stuff like classification of alerts, detection rules. All these stuff is basically we can do it. We can implement them by using SQL. The next thing is the classification of alerts. How we can classify alerts. So in order to classify alerts, we mainly use these particular four main actually definitely we use these particular four main classification to classify, to categorize any alert. So whenever we receive any alert by using Sguil, we actually classify the alerts by using any of them. True positive, false positive, true negative, false negative. Let me explain you what exactly it is. So true positive mean alert occurred and it verified. So alert verified and event happened or incident happened. Incident happened. False positive mean we got an alert but no incident. So there was an alert but we didn't categorize that event as a security event. True negative. True negative means we receive you can say alert. It's basically no alert, no incident. So there is no alert and no incident. Okay. And false negative. False negative means it means undetected alert. Undetected you can say incident. Means no alert, no alert. So no alert but incident happened. So to better understand that all these four classification, let me just draw a table. Let's say positive. Positive mean alert exist. So we have alert, like it create alert. IDS or any other alert generating devices, they have generated an alert. Then we have negative. Negative mean no alert. So there is no alert generated. Now these positive negatives can be true or it could be false. So true can be, there could be two conditions, incident happened or no incident. Like it could be true, it could be like there is incident, there is no incident. False, no incident or it could be incident. There's two possibilities like 1 0. Now if you map them all, like for example, true positive. True positive mean alert exists and incident happened. It means we got an alert, it was true. Second, if you see true negative. True negative mean no incident, like there was no incident, and of course no alert. So no alert, no incident, it means true negative means you are 100% safe, nothing really happened. False. If you see false positive. False positive mean alert exists but no incident happened. Okay, so alert exists but no incident happened, that's fine. But the problematic thing is false negative. It says no alert but incident, sorry, not accident, it's incident happened. So that's problem, undetected, like we didn't catch that. And this happened because of the 0-day attack. So whenever a 0-day or new vulnerability is introduced, this kind of stuff happens. The next is the security data. Security data, like how to handle security data and all that stuff. So basically there are three main things that we do with the security data. Three main thing. In fact, one is the data reduction. We need to reduce the data, normalization and archiving. Reduction means the problem is if you see ELSA, as I mentioned, it maintains the logs, and ELSA is getting data from all around. Like we are getting PCAP files, we are getting, let's say, syslog files. We are also getting some alerts from different sources. But the problem is these information will be too much. So we need to actually put a filter down here, like what to capture, what not to capture. So data reduction is basically a process of identification of data that should be gathered and stored. So this process is called data reduction, where we are focusing on the data that we might need. Next is the data normalization. Now, as you can see, we are getting data from let's say you can say Wireshark. We are getting data from Wireshark. We are getting data from syslog server alerts and etc. etc. All this data could be in a different format, which could be difficult to process. So in data normalization, what we do is we combine the data into a common format, so it should be compatible with given technology. So that's basically combine the data coming from different sources into common format, so it should be compatible with the given technology. Next is the data archiving. As I mentioned earlier, for how long we need to keep that data. Like we got a good data, security data, then for how long we need to keep that particular data. So it depends. Like if I talk about ELSA, so ELSA by default, it retains the data for 90 days. So it retains the quality data, of course, for 90 days. And then you have to discard the data. You can also set that time. Like in Sguil, it retains the data for 30 days. And then after 30 days, you need to, data will be expired and all that. Although you can also change that. You can also customize it. For example, if an event occur, how do we handle in Sguil? In order to handle an event in Sguil, there are mainly three options for us, or you can say three main techniques. Number one, when a data is when an alert is generated, for example, if we receive a false positive means it's alert, but no incident happened. If you see this figure, false positive, like alert exists, but nothing happened. So if nothing happened, but we got a false alarm, so false positive, we need to discard it. Okay, so just to avoid, reduce the burden. Secondly, there's an option we can escalate an alert. So alert can be escalated depending upon the severity or criticality of alert, and you just have to hit F9 and automatically it will escalate the alert. Other than that, we can also categorize alerts like false positive, false negative, true positive, true negative, and all that. The last agenda is the digital forensics. I hope some of you guys are already familiar with digital forensics, but digital forensics, just like the regular forensic, what we do is we uncover evidence of criminal activity in which digital devices have been used. So definition of digital forensics is, if you want to define digital forensics, definition is recovery and investigation of information found on digital devices used in any criminal activity. This is basically called digital forensics. And please remember, while doing digital forensics, the most important component is evidence collection, evidence gathering. It's the highly critical process, and specifically whenever we collect evidence, we need to start with the volatile systems. Volatile systems are basically like, if you turn off the power supply, the data will be lost. For example, if something is stored in cache, memory, RAM, and all that stuff. So if anything is basically stored in cache, ARP cache, for example, the memory cache may be. So we need to actually start from volatile and then all the way to non-volatile, like your hard drive. So starting with volatile, which is highly volatile, and then all the way to non-volatile, so we cannot actually lose the evidence. In digital forensics, it has mainly 4 steps. There are 4 main steps in digital forensics. Firstly, the first step is called collection. Second step is examination. The fourth step is analysis. And the last step is, oh, sorry, 3. And the last step is the, you can say, reporting. Collection is basically gathering, firstly, of course, identifying plus gathering. So you need to identify what could be evidence, and then gather in a secured way, so it should not be modified or tampered. Next is the examination. What we need to do is we need to actually collect or extract information out of it. Extract information of from the evidence, and for example, it could be decryption, it could be decompression, etc. Analysis is basically where we draw conclusions. So based on our finding, we actually draw conclusions, like extract the data, analyze the data, and draw some conclusions. Last is presentation, like submit the whatever you found to the superiors or the investigating team, in fact. Very, very important thing is data integrity and the preservation, how to preserve the evidence. It's very, very important. So digital evidence should be preserved in its original condition. That is very, very important condition. So evidence handling is a complete subject. If you take that particular course, you will learn that in detail. So basically, how we actually handle or how we collect the data, how we perform analysis. So what we do is we copy the evidence. We make copies of evidence. So we make copies of evidence and then also record the process of making copies. Like, how did you make copies? Okay, that's also important. And then perform analysis on copies. So don't actually perform your analysis or test the evidence on your original condition. Why we are doing so? Because the time stamp of original, like metadata, original condition or original evidence, it's basically metadata, like who modified last time, metadata. It's also very important, who actually updated the file and all that stuff. It's very important. So while handling the data, while handling the evidence, it is very important to actually make copies and perform analysis on copies rather than performing analysis on the real data. In our online session, we'll discuss problems and issues regarding the chapter, and I will shortly upload the video for overlap as well. Thank you.